Good afternoon, Kennesaw State, and thank you for joining us for the second edition of the Owl Hour here on student-run Owl Radio. I'm joined once again by Devon, Delarm, and Henry Higuita, and we will be discussing all things KSU sports, as well as sports around the Atlanta area and beyond. One of the main topics of discussion today will be the tough loss KSU football faced this past weekend against Georgia Tech. But before we dive into that, let's take a look at some of the other sports that have been playing in the past week. The volleyball team won its home opener last Tuesday in straight sets, with junior right side hitter Emma Scherfrans leading the way with 14 kills. Senior outside hitter Lauren Chastang set a new school record for service aces in a match with 7. For Coach Schunzel's team, it was their 4th all-time win against an SEC opponent. And here is a quote from Coach Schunzel. 2 things I love tonight. First, that we defended at a really high level for the entire match, receiving serves, blocking, just all-around great defense. And second, I thought we did a great job tonight of finding several different ways to score. Our offensive wasn't as effective tonight as I would have liked, but we made up for that with great communication on the court. After Tuesday's match, the volleyball team dropped 2 matches against tough opponents South Carolina and Clemson. Tonight, volleyball will be making a visit to Birmingham, Alabama to face Samford. And then later this week, the Owls will be in Greenville, South Carolina to play in the Furman tournament to play both the Paladins and High Point. The soccer team's game last week against Mercer was canceled, but they will be back in action this coming Sunday for a home opener against Wofford. And then now we can go on to the big event from last Saturday. The football team, a tough outing, falling 45-17 against the Engineers down in Midtown. Let's get the word on that game from Devon and Henry. Devon, what do you think happened in that game last week?
That was a mess. I think it's just overall just a defensive breakdown. I think we're so used to Georgia Tech in the run that once they started passing the ball, we could obviously see the breakdown between the corners and the safeties, especially. I was there for the game, and I saw some catches that should have been guarded, especially in their second touchdown. There was a guy just standing in the end zone. Nobody guarding him. He literally just had his hands up standing there, and that's how he got the touchdown. I think that was the defensive breakdown that ended up losing the game.
Yeah, it was always going to be a big challenge either way, for KSU playing a team like Georgia Tech. But one of the interesting storylines coming into the game is that Georgia Tech had lost, a game against Northern Illinois. So there was at least some intrigue as to what would happen in the game. There wasn't this preconceived predictability, so to speak, as there are so often with FBS versus FCS games. But Georgia Tech really, took on the challenge and said, you know what, we're really going to play well this week. And they did. They played very well offensively, Georgia Tech did. And the KSU offense, which was really the area of intrigue in terms of how well they could do, they had a late touchdown, but they did struggle for most of the game. Do you think that there were other chances for the KSU offense to score besides the 17 points?
I think there were definitely other chances. I think our run game was extremely strong. I don't think Georgia Tech was ready for it. But I think when it came to passing the ball, that's when we really started to see a struggle between a connection with the quarterback and the wide receivers. A lot of drops, a lot of overthrows, a lot of underthrows. I think it's something KSU really needs to work on if they really want to start expanding their team and if they really want to start expanding how many wins they're gonna get against these bigger schools, especially.
Any thoughts on the game, Henry?
Yeah. So quick story. Because on Saturday I was actually running a few errands and I missed the first quarter. But I have the app, right? So I was looking at some of the updates and I was like, Georgia Tech picked up the early touchdown. And then I saw them, Kennesaw started making a deep run. And then I was like, oh yes, we can tie the game. And then I come back and I'm like, wait, 14-0, that's not right. And then I realized, oh shoot, they won on a fumble. And they ran and got their touchdown. So I think one of the big issues there was obviously the offense. I think, quarterback Xavier Shepard, he just didn't have the best of days. I think that's what happened, and it took him a while to really connect with the rest of the offense. The defense also a little rough, but I think what they've got to do. They got to shake it off, come back for the next game. Those are just the thoughts I had.
Yep, it was. Like we said, it was going to be a difficult game no matter what for the Owls. But, of course, turnovers don't help. No matter who you're facing, doesn't matter what the opponent is. Turnovers will not help. In the process of a game. So they got to pick themselves back up, have a better game next week, and we will see what KSU can do, because it really comes down to if the defense can remain cohesive against other teams in conference, and then really, be able to find the success that they have over the last few years, because the offense is going to be getting those 300, 350-yard running games consistently. It looks like it's going to be another one of those years. So certainly the defense has a lot to think about over the next couple weeks if they're going to be able to step up to the challenge, in the conference. And outside of that, there's a lot of interesting things going on in college football. Devon, what were some of the things you observed in college football this weekend?
I actually did not get a chance to watch a whole bunch of college football this weekend. I did watch the Oklahoma game. That was definitely one that I turned on and I was like, this is going to be another one of those games for sure. I actually went down to Athens after the UGA game, and the amount of times I get barked at in Athens makes me a little uncomfortable.
Yeah, I wonder what they're trying to say. You gotta really...
If only I could speak dog.
Yes.
I only speak owl, sadly.
Yeah.
Yes, personally, it was another bizarre weekend of another bizarre Tennessee performance. Pretty close this time, though. 41-34 against Pitt. A really interesting game, but some missed opportunities at the end. But certainly, aside from that, there were some really good games going on. A lot of teams moving up and down. Coastal Carolina being that former semi-rival KSU team that had faced KSU a few years back. Seeing them in that top 25 is always an eye-opener. And that kind of success is interesting. Michigan, winning again is another interesting topic. I think one of the big games, BYU had broke a losing streak. I don't recall how many times they've lost in a row to Utah, but that rivalry between Utah and BYU, I believe they call it the Holy War over there, is a big deal. And BYU finally won 26-17 against Utah. So big props to Brigham Young for their ending of a big streak in a rivalry game. It must feel really nice for those students and everybody there for that to happen. But now we can talk about NFL. What a crazy, crazy weekend. A lot of really exciting games, including last night's Raiders-Ravens extravaganza, let's call it. But overall, a big weekend. Not the best of starts for the Atlanta Falcons, but we will start with them. But overall, just a crazy weekend, right, Devin? I mean, that was something.
It was definitely a weekend to watch. Rookies were all over the place. I mean, like, you looked left and right, and I saw rookies popping off, okay? Like, it was insane, because in the preseason, we see Jamar Chase drop all of these passes all of a sudden, and, I mean, he's got 20 points on fantasy, got a 50-yard touchdown. I mean, it's like stuff like that. It's just like you don't see every day. Jalen Hurts threw 4 touchdowns against I say 4 touchdowns. That's right? Yeah. Against the Falcons. It was definitely. It was a game I had on. I'm sorry, let me correct myself. 3 touchdowns. It was a game I had on that I was just like, can I continue to watch this? Can I continue to put myself through this in college?
Certainly a difficult situation for the Falcons this year. I think expectations were limited this year, but there was still some positivity before the season because it is a team in transition right now. I think there is sort of this reality of the end of the previous era and trying to move on in the best way possible. But we will see what the Falcons can do in the future because the ownership, compared to a lot of other NFL teams, has done a good job of getting the Falcons to a point where they can contend over the last decade or so, get to that Super Bowl. And so if the pieces can really fit better, I do think the Falcons aren't necessarily doomed to a terrible record like a lot of other teams with bad ownership for years and years. Like before the Jaguars had that rise a few years ago, they had years and years of just, not just mediocrity, but bad records because there wasn't that investment. But I think if the Falcons can just find that formula and find somebody who can eventually get, replace Matt Ryan and so forth, that can really be a team that, they don't have to tell themselves, oh, we're going to be 4-12 or something. They can maybe be 8-8 for a couple of seasons, but get past that. So that's at least my opinion on that. Speaking of former football players in Georgia. Matthew Stafford, what a great start to his new career almost. It really just it feels like a new career for him. It should, because years and years of trying to win at Detroit, getting to 3 playoff appearances, but early exits every time, getting to play on a team like the Rams, having a great first start. He really seemed excited, didn't he?
It's for sure. I mean, like, you watch that team and you go, these guys are for real. This is definitely not even at this point a playoff contender. This is a playoff maker. This is a Super Bowl contender. This is like the Rams went out and they got their guy. They said, we're done drafting. We're done looking at first-round picks, okay? Why don't we give that up and stop gambling and start getting established players? And you can almost respect that about the league in the fact of, everybody wants these first-round picks. Everybody wants to gamble on these college players who are so good in college. But the Rams said, no, like, why don't we just take these guys who have established themselves in the league, such as people like Jalen Ramsey, Matthew Stafford. Even when they signed Brandon Brooks, he's not there anymore, or Brandon Cooks, he's not there anymore. But when they signed him, like, these are guys who put themselves in the league and said, we know what we're gonna do, we know how to get there. Put us in, we'll get you there. And like, it's something you can only respect. I mean, as a Seahawk fan, I mean, I look at that, I'm like, dude, I was really hoping for Matthew Stafford to kind of suffer, but I mean, I got to look at it and be like, these guys are serious. I have to take them seriously. The Seahawks, the NFC West needs to take them seriously. The NFL needs to take them seriously.
Yeah, the NFC West, and I believe the
AFC West.
AFC West, sorry, yes,
both undefeated.
Yes, both undefeated. Very interesting stuff coming out of there. But speaking of the NFC West, a really, really exciting performance from Arizona against Tennessee. That was something that, even as a Tennessee fan, I have to admit, that was really cool to see what Arizona's doing. They really do have an exciting team, and that's going to be one to watch. And I think there seems to really be a sense of unity, within that team, that they really feel like they can gel together and really make a big playoff run, which, again, it will be difficult because the NFC West is really good this year. And on the AFC West, of course, Kansas City, Cleveland, what a game. Just another great performance from Mahomes. And so that's going to be a really exciting, both of those teams are going to be really good, but I think that was a good first taste of a possible playoff game right there. That could be a big playoff game. I think one of the strangest games, and it really was not close at all, but the Saints-Packers game made me really think about what direction both of those teams are going.
You can only sit and ponder your thoughts because Aaron Rodgers promises this last dance moment with Devontae Adams, and they go out there and Jameis Winston's throwing passes on them. They can't seem to stop anything. Aaron Rodgers can't get a single pass in.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many storylines there because the conundrum that is Jameis Winston himself with his up and down performances. But right now, when he's confident and when he is really, self-aware of what he's doing, I mean, it's hard to stop that guy. And with the Saints and a lot of the talent that they do have outside of Jameis Winston, that's a team that people are going to really have to look out for because I think people were skeptical because of how Jameis Winston's, his 40 touchdown, 40 interception season is pretty much, sums up the kind of player he can be. But when he is more disciplined in a variety of different ways, he can really be a dangerous threat. And he's proven that again. And yeah, the Aaron Rodgers conundrum is another thing that was really confusing. And just that team's really going to be like, okay, now it's damage control mode because they might think this is a one-off game, but I don't think it is. I think this is like a bigger problem.
This is definitely something you have to look at. And if Aaron Rodgers wants out of Green Bay, I mean, who's going to want you after the season goes downhill?
Because I mean, he is Aaron Rodgers, but I think there's a whole different side to what's going on right now in terms of the confidence and what does he want? What is he going to put in? Because if he doesn't utilize his talents, which we all know he has, well then what are other teams going to believe? Are they going to expect the Aaron Rodgers we all know, or are they going to expect a guy who kind of just doesn't really care as much as he did a year or two, or of course before that? So it's a fascinating situation over there, and it's going to be really interesting to see how they're going to be able to pick themselves up, because when you have a franchise guy like Aaron Rodgers, his personality is everywhere on the team. He's not just another guy on the team. So however he's acting is going to rub off on everybody. If he's just going to continue the negativity, well then that's how the team's going to go. I think. I mean, when you got a guy like him, with his talent abilities anyway. So that is something.
For sure. I mean, you can only sit here and look at the guy. I mean, he wants control over the team, and if you're going to have control over the team, you got to make sure this team is being consistently successful and not losing to somebody who doesn't even really have a wide receiver one.
Yeah,
I mean, Michael Thomas is out. Jameis Winston has stepped up to the plate.
Yeah.
I mean, we see maybe after sitting back behind Drew Brees, maybe that did correct some type. Maybe having that mentor helped him. But we're starting to see this FSU version of Jameis Winston. You lost to this team. It's like, what kind of example are you setting for your team at this point?
Yeah, what was really interesting is he had 5 touchdown passes, but he only had around 20 to 22 attempts the whole day. So I think what that tells me is that Jameis Winston is now becoming ready to be an actual manager of the game, which is what he was able to do on the college level, but he's so far been very, very erratic on the NFL level in terms of mentally being the leader and managing the game. There's been, of course, bursts and sparks of his brilliance, but this game, I think, if he can carry this energy and really prove that, okay, he can actually become like a mature leader, and I would have to assume Drew Brees had something to do with that, but if he's able to apply himself, I mean, this is a dangerous team. He really is. So, and then, yeah, last night's game, that was something else right there between the Raiders and the Ravens. Just, you know, after watching it and, you know, going back over the highlights, I realized that the Ravens had so much control early on in the game, and it really didn't feel like the Raiders were in it, but the score never really got that far apart. And then just little by little, the Raiders were able to come back, and then the bizarre overtime situation with, you know, the Raiders thought they had won the game, they couldn't get it in. It's just that was something else. So, any other observations?
I mean, you just kind of look at the game and you're just like, early on, obviously, it's like, oh, this is an easy Ravens lockdown. I mean, the Raiders, obviously, you know, a basic team in the past. They're not great, they're not bad. But then you just kind of see this performance, and you can only wonder, like, wow, maybe are the Raiders for real or are the Ravens fake? I mean, there's this, we got to fumble that because, I mean, Lamar Jackson fumbled the ball. I mean, the Raiders' D-line was obviously almost controlling the situation. And it's just like, you just kind of got to look at this and be like, which team is the better team now? What are we looking at? Is John Gruden actually getting this team together? Or are we looking at these pretenders like we saw last year when they were doing really well in the beginning and then they kind of fell off, right?
Well, yeah, it's really fascinating because even Derek Carr did not play very well until the fourth quarter. So is that going to be how it's going to go in the season? Because that's not a recipe for success. You know, not every game will end up like this game where they end up winning in overtime because the other team didn't execute, you know, fully later on in the game. But it will be really fascinating to see. Okay, let's see if the Raiders can put something together. The last thing I want to touch on the NFL before we move on to Henry and some really interesting soccer that's been going on recently is the Joe Burrow experience, the Bengals, Vikings, a little bit of controversy toward the end of that game. But I think we are seeing a very, very, potentially a very interesting possible playoff team in the future with Joe Burrow. I think this kid, everyone saw what he did at LSU, but really mentally he's there. I think he's locked in. That's going to be a team that will, maybe not this year, but that'll be a team to look out for.
Mm-hmm.
And Cincinnati just needs to build. If they can build around the guys, like a lot of other exciting rookie quarterbacks, but if they can build around the guy, they have someone who will not just be physically capable of taking them to a playoff team, but I think he's very much a kid that's mature beyond his years at this point. So that'll be really interesting to watch.
Did you Chandler Jones is on track for 45 sacks.
Yeah.
And I think it's insane that someone in week 1 has 5 sacks alone. Some D tackles don't even reach that within a season.
Yeah, I mean, that tells you that mentally he's there. Whatever the schemes are, he has a very good positional sense, and he's willing to go after the quarterback,
100%.
Which is really exciting. I think that's something that a lot of teams hope that they would have, is somebody who is willing to do it over and over again and is willing to, really, because you're really sacrificing your body at that point, but that's really, it's really amazing that number is there.
100%. I mean, like, you see Chandler Jones kind of in this breakout, and it's like, is it because they have J.J. Watt on the other side, and now a team doesn't know, okay, who do we have to double block? I mean, I can't sit here, we can't double block, like, Akeem Hicks, Chandler Jones, and J.J. Watt. Like, this is such a solid D-line. I can't sit here and go, well, who are we going to block? Because eventually someone's going to get a sack, right? So, Chandler Jones, I think that Cardinals defense, if you're playing fantasy, pick them up.
Yeah, the offense and the defense, my goodness, that's a very exciting team to watch. So now we can go to the other football, the international football right now. We got Champions League going on, but before we talk about that, we'll hand it over to Henry here to talk about both Atlanta United and the United States men's team. So a lot of exciting soccer. What have you been seeing in the last week?
Right. Well, Orlando, tu padre tiene algo que decir. Orlando, your father has something to say. That was the message in the Benz Friday night. Atlanta United really showed up 3-0. A lot of great things there. But first of all, I want to talk about what made that win so special. Atlanta United, before that match, was, well, and they still are, 8th, right? Which the playoff cutoff starts at like 7th place. So 7th, 1 through 7, those are the teams that qualified to the playoffs. Orlando was 2nd. And, one of the big things is that Atlanta was missing a lot of players. They were missing Miles Robinson. They were missing the star striker, Joseph Martinez. They were missing Ronald Hernandez. And, George Bello came in in the second half. But, here's the thing. I read some stuff by some MLS journalists, right? Some reporters for the MLS, and one of them wrote, if you had told me at the time lineups came out that by the 75th minute the score was going to be 3-0, I would have assumed you meant Orlando was winning, because Orlando had their full strength lineup, except for like the goalkeeper, Pedro Galese, because he was off in the World Cup qualifiers with Peru. But other than that, Atlanta came from a shaky performance against Nashville, and now they had to face the second in the East. Not an easy thing to do. But this was an Atlanta side that was totally different from what we saw 2 weeks ago. And I think what happened there is, obviously you see some Pineda pizzazz. Gonzalo Pineda, the new man in charge of the Five Stripes. His tactical genius started to show. He knew he wasn't going to have Joseph Martinez, so instead of forcing another striker, instead of putting in Kubo Torres or someone who would do a mediocre performance, he did something interesting. He actually had what he called a pair of false nines, which in other words is like two midfielders that aren't like necessarily strikers, right? They go in the middle, they drag marks, and basically they try to open space for some of the wingers and some of the other midfielders to come and score. And they played it perfectly. They played it really well. Orlando was confused beyond belief. Some big stars of the game. George Campbell, the homegrown, in his first start for Atlanta United, he did really well. He filled in for Miles Robinson at center back. He was solid on defense, and he picked up a goal off of a fast corner by Marcelino Moreno into the box. He just ran in there, and the defenders didn't know what hit him. So he kicked off the game in a very, very good way. He said he felt really amazing with that goal, especially because it was his mom's birthday. So that was a nice touch, yeah. And yeah, he talked a little bit about after the match in the press conference. He talked about how Pineda's sort of been trying to adjust their system a little bit, how they've been moving from a man marking system to a zonal marking system, and it takes a little bit of work, obviously, to make those changes mid-season, or a little bit more than mid-season, because we're, I think, 2/3 of the way through at this point. It takes a little bit of adjustment, but he said, they're working through it. They're doing good. And, they have a lot of players, and they can go a lot of ways. That's what he said. A few other big stars of the game, Ezekiel Barco, with his Messi-style goal at the end, where he received a long ball from Brooks Lennon, and then he proceeded to dribble and I think he took out like 3 defenders there, and then made a good shot for that third goal to seal the game. He also was the one who kicked the free kick, the one who did the free kick for a Daryl DK own goal. It was kind of weird because he centered it, he put it in the box, and then it apparently bounced off of Orlando's Nani and then off of Daryl DK's hand into the goal. So it's an own goal. It counts. A very, very cool game because they just, the tactics behind it were impressive. I was not expecting that because of how they played against Nashville. It was totally different team. One thing I wanted to point out is that Rob Valentino, who was the interim head coach during this whole Heinze to Pineda transition, I'm glad to see that they kept him on the staff. He's one of Pineda's assistant coaches. I'm sure the players are also glad because they felt a connection with him. They really liked Valentino. They really responded under him. They got 4 wins with him, so that's something huge. And Valentino's a skilled coach. He can be a great manager someday. Is what you hear some of the players say, what you hear Pineda say. So yeah, I'm glad they kept him on. It's been good. And Pineda really read Orlando well. He set up the tactics, not just the 2 false nines, but also the new sort of system on the attack. And if you watch the game, you notice this. There was always at least 2 options for a player to pass it at some given time, right? So if the Orlando player came up to take the ball or to mark one of the players, they'd just pass it to the other one. And so Orlando was stuck in this position where they didn't know who to mark. They were all over the place, and that really helped Atlanta get the 3 goals, pick up the 3 points, which were very important because now they are within couple of points of passing that playoff line. So we've got the next 2 games tomorrow, Wednesday, at home against FC Cincinnati at 7 p.m. It's going to be a great game. Unfortunately, we won't have midfielder Santiago Sosa due to yellow card accumulation, so that's unfortunate. But he will be back for the DC United game on Saturday at 3:30. Which if Atlanta United can manage to, pick up the 6 points there, they have a very good chance of not only qualifying to the playoffs, but also potentially going up in the standings. And that's important because the higher up you are in the standings, the more playoff matches you get at home. So that'll be awesome. It'll be great to see if we can get some playoff matches in the Benz. Yeah, that's what I've got for Atlanta United.
Alrighty, and you said you may have had some stuff for the men's team?
Right. The men's team, they defeated Honduras last Wednesday, I believe it was. They did really well, 4-1. Our own, George Bello and Miles Robinson started for the men's team. Bello, as usual, strong on offense, but had a few struggles on defense. That one goal from Brian Moya for Honduras, they centered the ball, and he was Bello's man to mark, and unfortunately he left him. So, yeah, it's just some stuff he has got to work on. He's a talented player. George Bello is a very talented player. There's a reason he's gotten the start for Atlanta United. There's a reason he's on the U.S. men's national team. He's got talent. He just needs a little bit of training, a little bit of work. Another big star for the men's team, Ricardo Pepi, the young and talented striker who plays for FC Dallas. It was his debut with the U.S. men's team. He's 19 years old, very young, but he's grabbed the attention of everyone in MLS with his performances with FC Dallas, and now he's done a lot with he's left his mark on the men's team, the national team, with his goal to break the tie in the second half. It was a well-placed center into the area and into the box, and he got in there. Well-placed header into the back of the net. Great goal. One great thing about him is that Pepe really knows where to position himself. He comes in out of nowhere almost, and just by the time the defense sees him, it's too late because he's already there. So yeah, he's got a bright future. Clubs from Italy are actually starting to look for him, so he might be leaving Dallas soon, but hopefully they can cultivate his talent and we can have he can grow and he can do some more for the U.S. men's team, especially with the World Cup coming up. Some other notable spotlights there, goals from Aronson Robinson, not our Robinson, another Robinson. There's Anthony Robinson and Sebastian Lletget for a very dominant victory over Honduras. So the U.S., here's where it stands. The U.S. men's national team are third in the World Cup qualifying standings for CONCACAF. They have 5 points. They're tied with Canada and Panama. Each of them also have 5 points. The thing is, they are more tied with Canada because with the tiebreaker, Panama would remain behind in fourth place. So really, the U.S. is tied with Canada, who is currently in third place. And if the U.S. can win the next set of games, which their next game will be against Jamaica on October 7th at 7:30, well, they have a chance to really get in there. The thing is, they're not the teams aren't too far apart. Mexico, who's in first, has 7 points. There are 11 matches left, and there are 3.5 qualifying spots in CONCACAF. I say and a half because the first 3 teams automatically qualify for the World Cup. The fourth team goes to a wild card game against some of the other wild cards from other regions. So it's gonna be interesting. They look solid so far, and if they keep this momentum, they'll be in the World Cup. So Rio, quick question: how did Newcastle do this weekend?
All right. We had to bring up the sore subject, didn't we? Well, to be fair, it is important to talk about Cristiano Ronaldo. Can't speak very well today. His big second career debut with Manchester United at Old Trafford. It was quite a nice performance from Manchester United, to be fair. And they had a really good second half against Newcastle. Unfortunately, Newcastle did not do very well, especially in that second half. I think the first half was decently even. But Ronaldo coming back with his relentless energy in that game, you could tell how happy he was to be back in Manchester United. I believe he said after the game that he literally felt like he belonged there and that he wanted to play his heart out every single match. And you saw that. And it took a little while. I believe the first goal wasn't until added time in the 45th minute of the first half. But certainly after that, the floodgates kind of opened and that offense found its groove, and Manchester United had the scoreline of 4-1 against Newcastle United. But Ronaldo, it is really refreshing in a way to see him back in the Premier League. He is 36, but he's also Ronaldo, so he's going to be a force to be reckoned with week in and week out. not just because of his skills, but really it is going to be that passion he really genuinely has for Manchester United. It's going to be a handful for any defense who's interested in trying to partake in facing him. It's going to be really, really daunting. So props to Ronaldo and for Manchester United for really giving him a great second debut with the team. Aside from that, there are, I believe, 4 teams with 10 points right now. It's going to be really, really interesting to see how the Premier League shakes out for the rest of this season. I think the manager of Newcastle, Rafa Benitez, had a great start so far with Everton, who have 10 points, along with Chelsea and Liverpool. They're all at 10 points right now, which means they're all ahead of Man City for the time being. I know only 4 matches have been played, but it is interesting to see that there are some teams who are really looking to get ahead of Man City early, establish themselves as the next top team in the Premier League. Other than that, a lot of other exciting stuff going on in the Premier League. West Ham are still up there with 8 points. Tottenham on 9 points. Brighton on 9 points. That is a team who made some very what I would call underrated choices. Right before the transfer window, I believe they had something over £60 million transfer for their defensive player Ben White over to Arsenal, who are not doing so well. They did get their first win, but they are still 1 win, 3 losses. So we'll see how that turns out for Arsenal. But for sure, Brighton reaped the rewards of investing in multiple players after the fact. So that's going to be a team to watch. So please excuse us while we take a moment to pause for station identification. And we will be continuing our show in just a moment.
Oh, it smells really good.
Yeah.
All right. Well, before we take a little bit of a break, Devon, do you have anything else you'd like to add for the moment?
Not at the moment. All I can say is there are a lot of MVP candidates that really made their case week 1, and I think everybody needs to keep an eye out for them. If you're in fantasy, make sure to keep an eye on people such as Devontae Smith, Jamar Chase. If you have Russell Wilson, Kyler Murray, those are for sure starts. I'm not just saying that because I'm a Seahawks fan, but maybe just a little bit. And
Slightly biased.
if the Cardinals are still not picked up in your league, I'd go ahead and pick up them. I know I did in my leagues, all 3 of them, and that's all I got to say on that.
All right, so one last thing. There was some really exciting tennis over the weekend at the U.S. Open. Novak. He lost in the final. He has been on a very interesting streak recently. He was trying to go for the calendar Grand Slam, but I think the other streak people have been looking at are broken rackets. He's had a few tantrums recently. I mean, he's so good, but it's really been interesting. People have been getting under his skin recently, including, I believe, the entire ATP have been getting under his skin a bit. So interesting to see if that had anything to do with his loss to Medvedev. Props to Daniil Medvedev getting his first major victory, so that's really, really cool. But the women's side had a fascinating match between 2 teenagers, and Raducanu of Great Britain became the first woman British woman to win a Grand Slam tournament in about 40 years. Virginia Wade, I believe, was the last British woman to win a Grand Slam, and she had, I think, a career total of about 5 or 6 majors. So certainly a really good storyline for the 18-year-old Raducanu, but the person she faced did an excellent job. Fernandez of Canada, I believe, But that was just a really, really cool match because it was a little bit different than what people expected. No Osaka, no Williams. There wasn't really the usual suspects in that final, but I think it really, for the people who watched the game, I think it was really, really positive because it was actually a really fun match. And so, again, on the women's side, the future of tennis is really out there. You have people like Ash Barty who are up there, but it is exciting to see somebody different every week there. So I think that's about it at this time. We'll go ahead and pause for a little bit, and we'll see if we'll be back in a minute.